You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take.
Plan. I'm the enemy. Because I like to think.
You can dress like a Barbie doll. You can hang out like a beggar's mom. You fit in anywhere you go. Bring your own style just to steal the show. You started so long with a slow and you said, drink with a loud, you drink and smoke on your bed.
Apostles triggered a smallpox outbreak.
Hello, and welcome to the show. As you can see, today I've got somebody here as a guest who doesn't normally...
Hello, I'm Ross Blackwell. I'm doing my best Peter Simeti cosplay.
Russ is apparently on mission with the IMF. I'm not sure exactly his location at the moment or what sort of world-saving activities he's involved with, but I'm sure that we'll all be very grateful once we find out what those are, if we ever find out what those are.
Okay.
Being clandestine work and all.
All right. I had no idea that Russ was a secret agent.
Yeah, whereas I'm, more like this.
I'm Lieutenant Frank Drebin, Police Squad. I'm investigating the attempted murder of one of your dog workers.
I like to think that we all do what we can.
Wonder what that would make me. Can I be Columbo? Just
Sure.
one more thing.
Sure. Just let me know which eye to look at when you're breaking down everything.
That's what these are for. You don't get distracted by the crazy eyes.
Oh, how's everybody doing today? Unfortunately, StreamYard is being a little cranky today, and it's not allowing me to display your guys' comments. So we won't have that for today's show.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I see that. What the hell?
Yeah, I don't know. It's not happening. But I do want to welcome everybody who's joining us today. Robert Shepard, Lord Crackhead 33, who just had a birthday. Hope you had a great one. Amanda B. and Infinity Comics, Alejandro. Thanks for joining us today. So today we've got our good buddy Pete Simeti on the show with us, friend of the channel, friend of yours truly, and a publisher that I personally respect and admire. Hey, Statistical Zero's here. Good to see you, Stato. And I wanted to have Pete on the show today for a couple of reasons. One, for I wanted to showcase the Alterna Fall 2021 campaign and have Pete just break down the details for us. And also, I wanted to have a chat about the state of the comic industry, because there's been a lot of change going on the past few years. And this year and last year in particular, I think there's been the most obvious outward changes to the casual observer or the casual reader. Maybe even, oh, hey, Russ is here. Hey, you're here.
I thought I was getting blanked.
Oh,
being
man.
late.
I just played.
Yeah, I saw it. I was watching it. It's great.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
How is this possible? I'm Ross doing cosplay of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
That's. I'm truly amazed by that accent. Well done.
Yeah. So I wasn't sure if you were still on mission or if you were back in country or what was going on. So
Yeah. I'm on mission. I'm on mission.
All right.
Honest. Yeah.
cool.
Wow, man,
Uh,
I gotta
Let's-
watch what I say.
let's change our layout here a little bit. So, excuse me. Yeah. So what I was saying is that the industry has changed so much in the last several years, and in particular 2020 and now 2021. And I expect it's going to continue to change drastically for the next 3 to 5 years. And I wanted to have somebody on the show with Russ and I who has lived it as first as a reader for a long time, and then as a publisher, and has been involved on the indie side, but is very, very familiar with the mainstream side.
Oh, great! Who is it?
Oh, well, it's this guy named Russ Leach. You're gonna love him.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. I can't wait.
No, and I was thinking, because I was looking at the Alterna Fall 2021 crowdfunding campaign last night, and it occurred to me that in the last 4 to 5 years, that Alterna has changed at least part of its business model pretty substantially, and each time it's been because its publisher, Mr. Simeti, had been plugged into the industry, mainstream as well as indie, rather than being isolated into one little bubble. Just happy to live in an echo chamber and talk to people who only agree with him, and preferably would tell him what he wants to hear as a publisher.
That sounds so nice. I can do that. That's an option.
It's an option, but I wouldn't advise it. It tends not to work out so well lately for people who live in those little echo chambers. So I was looking at the campaign, and it just had occurred to me how by Pete being really plugged into what was happening in the industry, but not being beholden to any one little corner of it, he's been able to, kind of figure out where the industry was going based on historical precedent, and then adjust his business plans accordingly. And Alterna is one of the very few indie publishers, and I've not yet seen a mainstream publisher do this, but one of the very few indie publishers who has been able to stay ahead of the curve, so to speak, when it comes to the changes in the industry, and be able to capitalize on opportunities where other publishers are suffering because they weren't able to see where the industry was going. So I wanted to have this be really not just a conversation between myself and Russ and Pete, but really an interactive one with the viewers, because most of the people who watch the show are either longtime comic book readers, and they've got experience with both mainstream publishers and independent publishers, or they're somewhat new to comics, and they've seen how successful independent comics have been, especially in the Comicsgate side of the pool, let's say. But there are also other independent publishers, independent creators, self-publishers who are using crowdfunding very successfully. Brian Polito is kind of the godfather in my eyes of, successful independent publisher who is using crowdfunding before most other people were. And even though there were other people who were doing crowdfunding at the same time that Brian was. Jimmy Palmiotti, for example, I think may have been in there as early as Brian Polito was. Brian really, in my mind, was the first one to show repeated success, and that success being measured by each campaign, the sales result being much improved over the previous one. And he's now established a track record that is just undeniable. So I guess Russ and Pete, as far as where the industry used to be when we grew up in it, where, like in the 80s and in the early 90s, the industry, publishers, creators, retailers, basically everyone involved, distributors, they were making money hand over fist. And, well, I shouldn't say all. The successful ones were. There's always going to be failures in any part of business, any part of industry, right? No matter how successful everyone else is, there's always going to be some people who don't make it. That's the nature of business. But there was such a sustained period of success for the longest time. And then in the mid 90s, there was this implosion that started happening. And then by the late 90s, there was disaster and the industry almost folded. Marvel declared bankruptcy and they were the biggest, dog on the block. So as Marvel went, so most everyone else went. But
well, that was when the publishers, I think, started deciding that they should blame the customer for the failures as opposed to business decisions involved. And because if it's always associated with it's the collector crash, the collector bubble burst,
the speculator boom,
which
and
means
bust.
it's the customer's fault. It's the customer's fault,
Right.
And it's no, it was because publishers did a lot of stupid things at the time. They took advantage of a lot of retailers and customers. They did a lot of gimmicks. Distribution was all over the place. Marvel with the whole way that they handled Image with those top creators. Image with the way that they then handled making deadlines and putting the nose to the grindstone and not having the killer instinct to crush the big two when they could have.
Right.
The big two then deciding, well, we got to compete with Image. What do? Kill Superman. Rip the adamantium out of Wolverine. Big drastic changes, crossover events, nonstop, covers out the wazoo, gimmick, collector item this, collector item that. And then, deciding Marvel to go into distribution when they really had nothing left.
They couldn't afford it and they didn't know how to do it.
Yeah. So all these different business decisions. And then now it's just a common, they just say, well, it's collector burst, the bubble burst. And
right.
it's the customer's fault. And that kind of started the trend, I think, that we currently see nowadays, where it's become fashionable to blame the customer when the business fails, instead of saying, well, maybe we have something to do with that too. And,
do you guys think that the success of I should say relative success of the industry after the boom and bust in the 90s, that from about 2000 through 2008, certainly, but especially 2000 to 2005, I think there was a drastic recovery period financially for the biggest publishers. I know the indies still really struggled, but then there was a few years, maybe from 05 to 08 into 09, where it seemed like everything was on an upswing, and it seemed like
they were starting to right the ship a bit. Yeah,
it seemed like they were starting to right the ship. Did you guys get that same sense?
Some of it was economy, to be honest. And then you had a crash in 2008, 2009 again.
Right.
You had 9/11 at the start of 2001. In that period, I suffered from that in the leisure industry at the time. There were a lot of repercussions financially from that period of time, and then things grew again. And then you had the crash in 2008, 2009. Then things started again. I think most of it is just to do with the economy. To be blunt, I think. Because there was more money, there were more people buying stuff, and more older people. I think the deeper nail in the coffin for the way that the comics have been presented is the fact that they're not on every store shelf everywhere. If they're not available to the general public, if they're just in comic shops, then what happens is only people who remember comics go and buy them. fewer and fewer young people buy them. I'm really into all ages comics. It's my thing. That brings the next generation up. Not necessarily kids comics, all ages, so that you can get your stories out to a wide range. But if they're not on shelves in front of people at the end of the aisle, then people don't buy them. They only go to comic shops to buy them. I love comic shops. I'm a nerd. Most people I know aren't nerds.
Yeah.
Okay, they don't go to comic shops. So in order to get them into the kids' hands, you need to. I mean, not every kid is going to like a comic. Of course they aren't. But even if you don't even get to the market that do like comics, you've got no chance of bringing on that next audience. And then you're relying on older people, a smaller, dwindling audience, and they're the people with the money, which is why you get the upswing.
Well, that's what's so strange to me about the product lines we have now that are reprints. And I don't mean at Alterna. I mean largely in the comic industry. You know, they reprint the True Believers, Image First, all that kind of. DC had that, I think, Essentials line. They might still have it. And they're usually $1. And they don't get out there into the world. I don't see what the point is of largely just putting them in comic shops.
No.
When a lot of the times, I mean, honestly, some of the True Believers issues, you can go into the dollar bin and get the actual issue.
Yeah.
Or you can buy the actual one for $5 at the shop.
Exactly.
It seems like they're still relying on the nostalgia of the audience that they claim.
I had a conversation about this earlier. It derives personally. I think it derives in part from the fact that they were taken away from the newsstand. I know there's lots of reasons. It isn't cut and dried. It isn't black and white. But the fewer the comics out on ordinary shelves in front of people, the fewer you will sell. Yeah. That's simple. Okay. And then on top of that, there's been an artistic, a academic snobbery about comics since the 50s. Okay, in the Western world. And that's why, I mean, we were having a conversation about manga and why manga was doing so well. I mean, the first part would be the amount of respect that manga as an art form has in Japan. The fact that you can see like a little girl or an old man reading a comic on a tube, you know. So you've got those pressures, you've got those snobbery of the artistic snobbery about comics.
The thing is, I think some of that too results in the fact that manga, they had that swagger. They just didn't care if you liked them or not. We're going to make the manga. We're going to get it out there. And the comic industry needed that swagger. You know, only a couple of people in the industry throughout its entire history had that kind of swagger. That at least came across like, no, comics are the greatest thing ever. But largely industry wise, especially for a lot of the different creators, a lot of the different publishers, and certainly some of the fans too, it was a very defensive kind of mentality. You know, you always felt the need to defend yourself as a comic fan, and instead of just embracing it and just going full tilt. Like, you know, this is my thing. This is awesome. If you don't see how awesome it is, go F off. You know, and it's you need that kind of confidence, that kind of swagger in the industry, but it comes top down. So everybody at the top needed to have that. But there was always that chip on the shoulder mentality. There was always that kind of paranoia from within. And we still see it pervade today. People are still in the industry not very comfortable with embracing full-fledged comic book creativeness. They're very into, could this be feasible if it's a movie? That kind of mentality.
That's in 2018 when I think we first saw the crowdfunding boom in comics. Polito had already been at it for a couple of years and had established that not only was it viable, but you could do very well if you did it, quote unquote, correctly. And he was doing it on a platform, Kickstarter, where the average comic was only making like 3,000, something.
It was joyous if you could hit that.
You know, and it was almost like so many of the creators there were allergic to money. You know, it was like they were almost apologetic if they made any profit. And then Polito comes in and just, you know, steamrolls them and is like, "Hey,
crabs it up.
This is how you make a profit, boys and girls." And then he just establishes his record of success. And then 2018, so I'm seeing Polito with that swagger you were talking about, Pete. And then 2018, I see Richard Meyer, your boy Zach, and Ethan Van Sciver, and Peter Simeti with that same swagger, and it was actually your boy Zach and Ethan with Jawbreakers Lost Souls launching and making like 400 grand, and then Cyberfrog launching and making, first it was 600 grand, then it was 800, and then I think it ended up around, what was it, like 1.2, something like that, million. But then those two campaigns convinced me, like, oh, this is feasible not just for one person like Polito, but this is feasible for anybody who wants to get in it and is willing to put in the time and the work to build an audience, and then puts a great product out there.
Well, what impresses me even more is the people that come onto the scene with just a really good product and a good head on their shoulders, and they want to make something that people enjoy, and they have success, whether that's a campaign that raises 10,000, 20, 50, 100.
Yep.
And that's, I think, testament to the fact that I don't want to say anyone can do this, but anyone that applies themselves properly and has that respect for the medium, their story, and the reader can do this. And the fact that the industry at every turn still is obsessed with saying, no, you cannot. They've become exactly what they hate. They've become the gatekeepers that they hated when they were coming up through the industry. And now, they're on the other side and they're like, no, this is our thing. And, you do it this way and this is the only way. And if you do it any other way, well, we're going to make sure you don't do it for very much longer. And that's kind of become the detriment of the entire comic industry.
Change is hard. Change is hard. And the bigger you are, the harder it is to change. And this happens all the time in business. It happens all the time. I think the comic industry is in flux. I don't think it's going to die. I think it's in flux, but it seriously needs to take note of what independent comic producers, comic artists and creators are doing, because we're garnering audiences. We're creating environments where people want to come and see what we're doing. Now, if we had the power of large print runs behind us and marketing and PR, just imagine what we could do, what we could all do. So if we can do it just from our small perspective, just think what they could do if they followed on and saw what worked. But it's a big ship. It's very difficult to turn around. So my fingers are crossed that they do come round. Simply because I still want to see those IPs. I still want to see those characters. And if
that's
they don't,
the break that I've had now, Russ, because the past 2 weeks I had this weird break. I don't know what it is. I don't know what happened, but I decided I don't care anymore. I decided they can end it all tomorrow. I don't care anymore. There's so much going on in indie comics. There's so much specifically going on at Alterna and with my own books that I want to start making, that I really just have no more emotional. It was very weird. It's like I woke up one day and things that upset me before, and it's been dissipating over time, but things that upset me before, I saw something really stupid and I don't even know what it is anymore, because it just went in and out the other
I
ear.
had
and
that moment. I had that moment 2 years ago. The way I feel about it now is almost like a curator. I don't want to see these things disappear. Not because I'm hungry for them, but because I just don't want to see them disappear. I mean, American superhero comics are as much part of the American psyche as, say, Westerns.
See, that's the thing, though. See, that's what I hit. I hit the fact that before I was really worried. I was like, what is there for the readers that are coming up? What is there for the creators coming up? What's their inspiration, the way I was inspired? And then it hit me and I said, all of us, everybody around us, every book that we're putting out at Alterna, all the indie creators that are paving the path. When I was coming up in the industry, and I use that term loosely, in 2005, 2006, I was looking more towards my heroes in the industry that were doing it how I thought. I'll take a couple different things, learn from their lessons. And now I look at it and I'm like, the people that are coming up now that want to make comics, because tons of people want to make comics right now, it's insane. They're looking at all of us. And it doesn't hit you when you're so close to it, when you're still in the mix, that it's like actually what you're doing is having reverberations and actually inspiring people the way you were inspired. So the whole time I'm sitting here, I'm so worried, they don't have the heroes that I grew up with. They don't have the creative people that were paving the way. And then I'm like, oh my Lord, I'm like, we're the creative people that are paving the way.
Yeah,
And
it's
we're
quite a
doing it
responsibility.
and we're doing it
Yeah.
in such a way too that I think is even more inspiring, because you couldn't do this kind of thing 15 years ago. You couldn't go to there wasn't crowdfunding.
No.
You couldn't go towards that path. You couldn't do a solely indie path without it really being a very, very difficult thing. And now, like, you just could. There's tons of people that do. They never made a comic before. They studied up on it. They're honing their craft. They put their book out there and they do well. And that just wasn't really a thing at all 15 years ago. So to see that that's happening, it put me in a very inspired and peaceful place, where before it was very tumultuous inside to feel like, what this industry that I love is on the verge of death. And now I'm like, maybe the mainstream, maybe some other company, maybe some characters. But as far as comics go, as far as creating great books, as far as hopefully we're making books that entertain people as well, there's a plethora of that. There's an overabundance, actually, I think, right now, if anything. So I felt very comfortable with, well, even if certain characters die, it's kind of like, well, they're the dinosaurs, and then here comes the early mammals, and then here's the human race, etc. It's always going to be, I'm looking at the greater picture of not, well, the dinosaurs are going to end, what's to become of the dinosaurs? No, it's more like what's to become of life, and life will never end. And in comics will never end.
I think looking at
a new age of them.
Yeah, looking at it from certainly from a positive perspective, this is a new golden age. There's no doubt. There's just so much creativity going on in the indie market at the moment. So many good books to read. You can't keep up with them all. And that's a great thing to have, because it's going to inspire even more people to create, not necessarily comics, just to create, just to be out there. Maybe the people that look at our books. I mean, if you inspire just one person with one panel, you've done your job. Yeah. Okay, that's why I love all ages work. But if you can inspire people to maybe make the next film, the next genre of movie, it doesn't have to be a comic. It's just about the connection and the storytelling. That's what's really.
Well, how many filmmakers and people working in television and video games were inspired by comics when they were kids, and that opened up their imagination to new possibilities, and then they discovered that those characters were in films, or that those characters were on a TV show or whatever. I mean, it happened with me when I was a kid, and one of the reasons why I wanted to be a writer was because of the comics I was reading when I was a kid. And, initially I wanted to draw. And then as a teen, I was a decent artist, but I saw there was a point where writing was very easy for me compared to drawing. And I saw how much further I had to go in art in order to, be on par with even the lower level artists at Marvel and DC, because that's all I was reading at the time. And then I would look at their writing and my writing, and I'm like, oh, that gap is a lot narrower. And so at the time, being a teen, I'm like, okay, well, I'll take the shortest route. I'll be a writer. But the point is that my imagination was unlocked, and my understanding of what might be possible was expanded when I suddenly realized, oh, these things don't just appear fully formed on spinner racks and grocery store shelves. There are people who actually have to do a lot of different things to make all this stuff come together to create this comic. Oh, I could do one of those things. It's that sort of a thing that I really enjoy seeing. As Pete, to kind of piggyback on what you were saying about people being inspired by independent creators who are doing this work. And I get inspired by the readers who are making comments about it, and they're saying things like, I'm starting to think about maybe making a comic. That inspires me to keep doing what I've been doing.
So that you may crush them.
No, but it's one of those things where, and I was thinking about this just a lot actually in the past few weeks. And yesterday, as I was saying, I was looking at the Alterna Fall 2021 campaign. And if you don't mind sharing your screen, Pete, we'll go ahead and put it up. And I'll have you start talking about the campaign here in a few minutes. But I was wondering if you would mind just giving kind of a brief summary of how you went from you were steering the ship at Alterna for quite a long time, selling graphic novels, and then you introduced the single issue comics a few years ago, and then more recently phased out the graphic novels. And with the single issues, you had this cool subscription service set up that I was a customer of, and then recently you had made it pretty clear that due to changes in the marketplace for a variety of reasons, that subscriptions were being phased out, but you were going with this crowdfunding model, and you had done crowdfunding campaigns before, but now you were going to use it in a new way. So if you don't mind just kind of walking us through that process, because I think it illustrates really well how people who want to be customers of independent comics or creators of independent comics, how we can all, by just being plugged into what's going on, we can all get more of what we want. We just have to be paying attention as to where to go to get it.
Sure. So I got my screen shared. So there it is. We got Alterna Comics Fall 2021 pre-orders, and this is the 15th anniversary year of Alterna. And when I tell people that it's inspiring to see people that aren't, big names in the industry come into indie comics or just comics in general and create something and eventually gain momentum and have a chance to have a career or a book or whatever it is, I speak that from personal experience. I never worked at another publisher. I never worked at a big publisher. I did small comic freelance jobs for indie creators. And then I started Alterna when I was 21, and I worked 2 to 3 other jobs at the time for about 6 to 7 years. And that's kind of what Alterna was. Alterna was my thing. And for 6 or 7 months, it was just my thing. It was a self-publishing label. And then it turned into getting submissions in and seeing commonality among a lot of creators that were having a tough time getting in. And they were very, very talented, way more talented than I thought I was. And I figured, well, strength in numbers. Let's see what we could do. Let's start small and do print on demand. And if distribution comes along, great. If not, whatever. And lo and behold, we had a lot of ups and downs like any other company. But, here we are 15 years later, and we're in a position where we have some of the greatest readers on the planet, tremendous, tremendous people supporting us. And without them, none of this would be possible. And for the 10, 11 years when we had distribution, we did just really only put out graphic novels. I'd say maybe a handful of single issues, but that really wasn't the thing that we did. And it worked more towards the production schedule and the life of indie creators, because I didn't want them, and I didn't feel comfortable at the time going in and saying, okay, well, I need 3 or 4 issues from you done. So we can have a backlog of issues to be put out. I was barely a publisher. I was barely a creator. I was just kind of just trying to make some comics. And I thought maybe, 5 years will probably be done and that'd be it. And I'll move on and do something else with some other company. And I took the lessons I learned and grow like that. But as Alterna kept growing, I kept on digging deeper and deeper into the trenches of creator owned, and no, Alterna is the future. Alterna is the way for me. So that slowly didn't become an option past, I think, like year 3 or 4. That's it, Alterna. And so we had a lot of different creators that were, they had day jobs, other things going on, or the books that they were involved with. So a graphic novel, 1 per year, seemed to make sense. And I figured, get a bunch of different people involved. We could put out maybe 1 a month. And so that's what we did, 10, 11 years of that. And then I saw the market, and believe me, at the time, everybody thought I was nuts. They were like, you can't do that. You can't just put out graphic novels. You need single issues first. You need a build up. You need all this other stuff. And then maybe a graphic novel, as a trade. They didn't like that idea at all. I got a lot of people that were some people were very viciously attacking, if you could believe it, attacking Alterna at that point in time. This is like 2007, 2008. And, we just kept doing it. We just kept putting books out. And then I saw the market getting flooded by the very same people that were telling me it was impossible. No one wants these things this way. They were putting out graphic novels, trades left and right. And before, trades were, they were the classic stories. They were the things that everyone loved. Watchmen, Dark Phoenix, any Batman thing, honestly. Yeah. I was going to think of Dark Knight Returns, but then I'm like, there's Long Halloween. Is this, death in the family? So there's so many different things with Batman. But that's really kind of what trades were for. Now, all of a sudden, every single thing was written for a trade. And trades were flooding the market. And this, I'd say, was around 2015. And I thought, we can't keep doing this, because before we could put books out for 6 to 8 months at a bookstore, and that would be the life on a shelf. I was starting to see graphic novels have turnaround times being returned from bookstores 1 to 2 months. That was it, because they didn't have the space for all the graphic novels coming in. And unless you wanted to pay for your spot, you did not have that spot for very long. So it became very difficult. It became like the periodical industry on the newsstand. It's a month or 2 months, and now they're gone. But now these are graphic novels. They're way more expensive. They're way more evergreen. They can sit around for longer than a month, and they just didn't. So I thought we had to mix it up, and I didn't want to put single issues out. They were at $4 a piece or whatever. I wanted to put single issues out on a more affordable level. I wanted to put comics on the market that were like the comics that I remembered when I fell in love with comics. So I put out the newsprint issues. A lot of stuff went into that. A lot of stuff still goes into that, because the newsprint printing is quite the nightmare. In terms of getting a printer to understand, no, these are things people care about. These are things they will be buying. These are not a catalog with real estate or cars in them that no one cares about, that they're going to throw away. This isn't a circular at a grocery store. This is something that people care about. And largely they lost touch with that because the comic industry left the newsprint printing industry a long time ago. So we did that. We put books out for $1.50. Lo and behold, we got a lot of hate for that. Same thing that when we did the graphic novels and we put that out, I tend to get a lot of hate from people. I realize that now. I don't know why. I think I'm nice, relatively speaking. So
I agree with that.
Relatively.
we put out yeah. I know some people worse than me, I think. So we put out the newsprint single issues, $1.50, $1.99 for like a 40-pager at the time. The readers loved it. And I found that people that read graphic novels and people that read single issues were not the same audience, really. It was very surprising to me. I had a book called The Chair that came out in 2008. It's a death row horror book, and it went into 4 printings. It got turned into a film in 2015. When the single issues came out in 2017, 4-issue miniseries, people thought that was a brand new book. And I don't mean a couple people, I mean thousands of people thought that was a brand new book. And I thought, wow, like this book has been out for like 10 years now. And, we had a couple of different issue miniseries that were like that, because the first couple of Alterna newsprint books were graphic novels being reprinted or broken down into these single issue miniseries books. And they were discovering Alterna for the first time. Graphic novel market is a very different market than the single issue market. Single issues are still where the large majority of comic book readers exist. They're given more prevalence. They're put on the wall. There's not really a big new release wall and a big fanfare for graphic novels. They're kind of more treated like, oh, you already read these. If you want this, it's here. You know where it is. But the single issues, it was like a spotlight. And so we got that spotlight on us, and people were very interested in that cover price, and they tried out a bunch of books on an impulse buy because they just figured, hey, $1.50, this book looks pretty decent. I can get 3 of these for the cost of 1 from this guy.
That was me. Part of it was I wanted to support Alterna in the wake of you getting serious trouble sent your way by a bunch of social justice psychopaths. But then part of it was newsprint comics. Seriously, I want to check these out. Let's see what these are like. And speaking of that, there's a question from Statistical Zero. He said, Pete, do you think there will ever be a day when newsprint has to give way to a different type of paper, or is newsprint the only way to go?
I 100% think that's going to be something one day. I honestly do. And I'm seeing it right now. It's becoming worse because there's other things going on in the world in regards to paper supply. And it's creating a bottleneck scenario at a lot of different printers, many of which newsprint printers, it's giant web press machines. You know, if you've ever seen any movie, I mean, heck, if you ever seen Superman, you know, I think there's a couple different scenes, the Christopher Reeve movie.
Yeah.
There's a couple different scenes where you can see the printing press. It's a big, large, noisy machine. Very much still the same thing. A lot of those printing presses have gone under. A lot of them can't afford to do that kind of business anymore. A lot of them can't afford to get the paper anymore because of different cost structures all over the place. So not to get nitty gritty and bore everybody to death with business details, I do think eventually we're probably going to have to switch away from that. I think it's going to be a slightly thicker paper stock, probably more similar to maybe I'd say something like the early Valiant books, but a little thicker, perhaps, maybe a little smoother.
Okay.
Otherwise, it'd be, you know, yeah. And it's not to say that that's not great. It's just more, that's just the way it's going to end up being. You know, and it's unfortunate because nothing to me is like that. But I think eventually it will. And I'd say probably within 2 to 5 years, go that way, because it's just, that's the way the market's changing.
That's a great pity.
Yeah, it really is. And it's not becoming an affordable thing anymore. And unless a lot of printers can realize, and that's what I've had many discussions with many printers, and they don't seem to realize the versatility and the appreciation for that kind of paper stock. A lot of them don't really get it. They don't really get that, no, you can do this. You can turn this into another rebirth of an industry.
Yeah.
And instead it just has become, you know, and publishers too, it's a big thing with them that everyone goes more and more towards a premium product. And I use the word loosely because some of them truly are premium, but some of them really aren't.
Yep.
And because of that, it impacts everything, and it's across the board.
It's that more money per unit rather than more units.
Yes.
You know, they're not interested in garnering huge followings. They're interested in how much money can I take out of a consumer, and so that's why there is this this backlash, or not backlash, but like it's a resistance against potentially going back to something like newsprint.
Yeah,
it's harder work. It's harder work from their perspective, because at the moment they just let it go through comic shops and it works for them, although it isn't working that well anymore. And I suppose the larger companies aren't really in the business of making comics anymore, so they're not so interested in kind of like large volumes in the way that they used to be interested in them. Whereas the rest of us can see that there's potential there for large volumes. But you've got to be able to get the market out there. You've got to be able to get the comics out in front of people in order to do that. And sometimes you do need bucks in order for that to happen. And only the large companies can make that happen. It's a bit chicken and egg, really.
Yeah. Because a lot of the smaller printing press companies too are going under because they can't afford to get a lot of the paper that would get them that discount that they need. And in order to get that affordable for people to, you know, so everything becomes the problem keeps feeding itself. And then you just get the larger companies. And I mean, honestly, this sounds like we could be saying this for nearly any kind of industry right now. It seems like that across the board.
I don't think it's peculiar to comics, no.
Yeah. So yeah, it's sad, but yeah, long story short, I do think 2 to 5 years, we're going to be seeing a switch away from what is technically considered newsprint. We're never going to really be putting our books out on the single issues out on like glossy or matte paper. There's uncoated paper stocks, 40 pound, 50 pound, that kind of a thing. I like the uncoated kind of, you know, it's not blaring. Just like you look at it and you're like, whoa, you know, I mean, I look at screens all day enough as it is. That's why I have to wear these sunglasses now. Everyone thinks it's like, oh, you want to be cool on screen. I'm like, man, I just don't want to get a migraine for 2 days.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And so, you know, that kind of thing with the books. I love the uncoated look of the books. I love that it adds a depth to the color. But so to get back to the campaign, we've got these 10 new books on here. This is something we're doing differently. We're not doing subscriptions anymore because of the way just the whole world is with supply chains. A lot of the stuff I just spoke about.
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable saying take out a subscription. These are the books you're going to get over the course of a year, and just trust us, because the past 2 years it has been very, very difficult to say that. And I don't like saying, these are the books you're going to get when I flat out no, we're not going to release them every single month. This is going to be very difficult for us.
Right.
So instead, with this campaign, all the books on the campaign are done. They're ready to go to print right as soon as the campaign ends. And every single first day of the season, I want to launch one of these with books that are ready to go. So that means that sometimes you're going to have a series where maybe one book comes out a year, because of the way the creative team is dealing with a lot of different things right now. Or you're going to have a book that is on every single campaign. Or maybe there's 2 books of that series on the campaign because that creator is they're done and ready to go. So those books will all be ready, finished. This isn't anything that's you're funding the creation of the books. These are all, we have a backlog because of the way everything has been going. So we're lucky. We've got enough campaigns for at least 3 campaigns. We got enough books, for at least 3 campaigns. And then when that 3rd campaign is up, like about a year or so from now, I'm sure we'll have a lot of other books ready to go at that point. So it creates a nice overlap, a nice gap for the books to get released and for creators to have time to complete those books too. Because the last thing I want at a creator-owned company is for me to feel like I have to, snap the whip every single time to get creators to get books done, when this is their story. This is their thing. I'm here to help. I'm not necessarily here to have them crank out at a breakneck speed a lot of product if that turns into a detriment upon them. So it's that kind of thing where I want to make sure we're working with the creators, and that means I'd love to have books come out every single week. I think we all would, but that's just not possible.
Well,
so
Statistical Zero from the chat is saying quarterly is great. It means I can get a higher tier. I appreciate that.
Exactly. So I think that works out really nice for the readers. I think that they can get 10 comics, $25. That's a really good price. And these are new issues. This is the first time we've done this on an Alterna campaign. Usually they're reprints. Usually it's like Alterna Ween. Usually it's, because you demanded it. These were reprint campaigns. And the only thing really new was maybe merchandise. Now we're talking about 10 new books. We're talking about very affordable. And even I'll scroll down here. You guys can see if you don't want to get all of them, you don't have to get all of them. You can pick and choose what issues you'd like. So if you just want, we'll say if you just want, it came out on a Wednesday, number 16, you go to get this perk. And then you can actually see in the add-on section too, we have a whole bunch of issues, the new ones and even old ones that are available that you can add on and customize and make your own bundle. So there's all kinds of stuff here. And some people say, how do you manage with all the add-ons? Don't you go nuts? And I'm like, we got 300 items in our store. This is a cakewalk for me. This isn't nothing. So
I'd like to say, as your latest backer, number 320, that
thank you, Matt.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, sir. I bought a beanie and a whole bunch of books, and it was all through add-ons. And I'd have to look at my order to see how many I just bought, but I think it was over 10. And so I appreciate being able to just pick and choose, what I need or what I want. One question I do have though is for people who want to buy multiples of one copy, what would you recommend for them?
If they wanted to buy multiples of one copy?
Say there was Baron Rat or Mighty Mascots, and they wanted a copy for themselves and a copy for the kids, and they wanted to buy, let's say, 4 of them. I don't know, 2 to 5 or something like that.
Okay, if you want multiple copies, if you want something great for kids, Mighty Mascots and Mr. Crypt and Friends is a really, really great all ages book. Not necessarily made for kids, but great for kids. Adults love them just as much. As far as getting multiple copies, though, like you mean to hand out to people that you think they'd really like the book?
Yeah, like let's say you want to get copies for yourselves and then copies for a friend, or if you've got kids, like for the all ages comics, you've got kids and you've got nephews and nieces and that sort of a thing.
Yeah, honestly, Mighty Mascots and Mr. Crypt are both really good. Or if you got someone that you know really likes horror, sci-fi, fantasy, it came out on a Wednesday is really good for that too.
But you can't order two. Is that what you're getting at, Joe? Like multiple. So if I went in there, can I do an add-on 3 times, the same add-on?
No, you can do an add-on twice. Well, I guess you can technically do an add-on 3 times if you were to get 2 bundles and then the issue as well added on, but you can't do.
Right.
I wish Indiegogo, that's the one thing. They do so many things really, really good. I wish they would have an adjustable quantity feature.
In all fairness to them, they're not a shop.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I know what you mean.
Start thinking like that, though.
Yeah,
it would really, I know they prefer not to think of themselves like that, but I mean, adjusting the quantity, I think, is just a no-brainer at that point. Because you could go in and back multiple times, but then you'd pay $5 shipping again.
Right.
Whereas if you back the one time and you're in the U.S., or even if you're international, you'll still save more on the shipping.
Yeah.
But if you're in the U.S., it's $5 flat shipping. So no matter what you add on in that one time, you get that all sent to you for $5. But otherwise, if you do want like 4 copies or 5 copies, or you want to go back in and pledge again, you're going to have to end up paying that separate shipping. Something that you do get, though, here on this campaign, because we have unlocked stretch goals as a bonus anyway. And I know Eric, the Guapo, does not like stretch goals. He does not like bonuses. And Eric, I thought about it the other day when you said that. Just if you truly don't want them, and you just like, this is clutter, I'm throwing it away, I hate these things make me so mad, just send me a message, and then we won't send you anything extra. We'll just send you what you order. Otherwise, I'm happy to send you whatever it is that you qualify for, and you can throw them away, burn them, whatever it is, put them through a paper shredder, make a video out of it, express your hate and disdain while you love the books. I don't care. That's fine. You guys know how it is at Alterna. But so you guys get an exclusive trading card. This is the #1 trading card of the set. We're starting trading card set called the Alterna series. And before, we had promo items that were trading cards. It's, nice art on there, and it's just one of these, this trading card is an exclusive to this campaign. Now it's, no, you're building a set. This is an official set that you can only get through backing the campaign. So the first card of the set is Ico from Red Koi. At 15,000, we're going to add the second card, which is Chiron Morvel from Blood Realm. A lot of people love that book and love that character.
Yeah.
And also, you get the Rad Rose collector case insert set. So you get the front pocket insert and the 2 side pocket inserts. If you don't have a collector case, that's fine. You're basically getting a nice print and 2 bookmarks to use. And now at the 10,000 mark, since we passed that, we've got a 6x9 random print of the covers involved. So, and I say random because I'm trying to encourage conversation and trading among the community here, among all the readers out there. We're gonna end up seeing that, I think, organically through the trading cards. Some people will miss the campaign, some people will skip one, whatever it may be, but want to get the cards, and maybe they can get them on eBay, or they know a friend who reads Alterna that got the card. Same thing with these, though. Every single backer is going to get a different one of 10. It's random, completely random. If you want the whole set, you guys can talk among each other, figure that out. But either way, if you don't want the whole set, that's fine too. You could just have a nice print from one of the covers on here. But that is something also that's for you guys.
You're getting compliments on the prints, and also Eric says, I appreciate that, Pete. I've received damaged books and art because they were shipped with extras. And this is from other campaigns, not from Alterna.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's frustrating.
He said, I would rather get what I ordered undamaged than get free stuff that bangs up what I purchased.
Oh, well, you'll never get anything that from us that damages that. But I understand that. So that's fine. Yeah. Send me a message. Let me know. And same thing goes for anybody that doesn't want any of the extras, whether it's because you don't want them or because, you're not going to use them, you don't like them, whatever it may be. Send me a message. We won't send you any of the extras. Or we can pass on those extras to someone else randomly if you'd appreciate to do that. But yeah, thank you.
I think if you're doing things like prints and trading cards, it's unlikely to do any damage. Eric may disagree with me. You might actually have an example of that.
I mean, talking about pins and things like
that. Yeah. I mean, I could see that happening. I personally, I appreciate when people do put extras in. but for me personally, it's more about the book and the core art. So I just do prints, and I don't even do the trading card thing. I just do extra prints, and I did do a fridge magnet, but they were very, very flat, so they're the equivalent of cards, I suppose. So they're not likely to do any damage. So I think I think there is something to be said for keeping your campaigns simple for what people are going to get, because at the end of the day, we're all here for the books, aren't we?
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you're someone that's running a campaign, you don't know how to properly pack those kind of things, think about that before you add them, because it could turn into a nightmare for you and for your backers.
Yeah, definitely. But packaging is important.
So as far as the campaign goes, where do you see it? I know you talked about doing these quarterly. Do you kind of have planned out for the next year or so of how you want to do these campaigns, or are you running this one and then based on however things develop, you'll kind of adjust from there? How do you want to see Alterna utilizing crowdfunding moving forward?
Well, we'll be using these. I'm hoping everything goes well with the printers, because it's been a nightmare. But it's always going to be the first day of the season. So this launched on the first day of fall. The next one should launch on the first day of winter, first day of spring, etc. If we have to skip one for whatever reason, it'll launch on the next first day of the season.
Okay.
I just want that to become synonymous with first day of the season, alternate campaigns up, that kind of thing. Very timely and something that sticks in people's mind after a couple of these. As far as the books that'd be on the next campaign, any books that are ready to go to print, I talked to all the alternate creators, and I'm like, what's ready? What's done? Let me know. And because if you don't, here's the cutoff date, and this is when I need it by, and that's it. You don't make it, So they're all on top of that. They let me know. I've got 2 or 3 campaigns worth easily of books that are ready to go, all done, all set, because they were still making books, even though we were having difficulties with all the supply chain issues and things like that. So a lot of those books are ready, raring to go. And, we can put these out there on these campaigns. And I think readers are going to enjoy the variety. And in some ways too, even though it might be disappointing to see certain series, maybe they have 1 or 2 issues out a year. There's going to be other titles in the mix that, you're going to be reading those. You're going to be enjoying those. And if you really, really, really want that series that you're waiting for and you wish they were a little faster on it, by all means, nothing motivates creators more than their readers saying, I really love your book. I need the next one. When's the next one coming out? Because I can if I say that, it just sounds like I'm being a mean boss. But if you guys say it, they go, oh yeah, see, they really like my stuff, then they shove it in my face, and I pretend like it hurts or they're doing something to me. And I'm like, yeah, get those issues done. You got to get those issues done. Get them out there. So, I'd love to see, like I said before, I'd love to see us able to put out new stuff every single week. I consider myself the first and foremost, the biggest fan of every book that comes through at Alterna. I don't sign on books that I'm not in love with, that I don't love the stories, that I don't want to see what happens next. So I'm invested in these things as well, in more ways than one, but as a fan first and foremost.
That's kind of the way that I treat this show. I don't want to talk about anything that or preferably both Russ and I, are both actually interested in. And even though I can't get every guest on that I would like to have on the show, when I do bring someone on, it's because there's somebody that I want to talk to about something that I think is interesting, Russ thinks is interesting, hopefully the viewers think is interesting. And so what you're doing with crowdfunding now on a regular basis, as opposed to, let's say, when you were expanding your storage area and you were doing, a fundraiser there to be able to expand operations, but doing something like this on a regular basis where, as a customer that, first day of every season, there's a new Alterna crowdfunding campaign, new books to check out. And then you can also pick up books that had been previously printed, I noticed, in your list of add-ons.
Yeah, so this way, if you go into it and you think, well, Tinseltown, Volume 2, Number 4, and you're like, what is this series? I don't even... Number 4. You don't have to leave. You could leave and do a separate purchase on alternaaccess.com, but you don't necessarily have to. You can get all the back issues right here, nice and easy for you guys. Same thing goes with, like, Downcast number 3, Mighty Mascots number 4. The previous issues are available. As long as we have them in stock, they're available on the campaign. A couple of issues of It Came Out on a Wednesday are not available because they're sold out. We don't go back to print with those because of the way that the anthology type of thing works, the rights and things like that. So we don't go back into perpetual reprint mode on those sort of issues because it's just a one printing agreement with the people who do stories for that book. But we do have other issues of even that title available too. Which honestly, it came out on a Wednesday because we don't go back to print. It's made them pretty scarce and kind of costly on eBay. So check your local comic shop first. Check the Alterna store first before you go on eBay and pay like $40 to $50 for an issue, because some of them are on there. So a lot of these are great. And also we've got the trading card binder now too. It's got the Alterna logo printed on the front of it. And it includes a 9-pocket page. This way you can start your Alterna set and your official Alterna binder. I'm glad these things have actually been taken off. It's been one of the most popular add-ons too. It looks like, 3 are claimed, but then you go into the add-ons and it's like, whoa, okay. People like the binder. Because at first I was like, oh, I guess it's a failure. Okay. And then I looked at the actual perks report and I'm like, whoa, a lot of people adding on the trading card binder. Great. And there's so many awesome trading cards out there too. So you don't need to just put the Alterna ones in there.
It's funny. I was thinking I had a card binder, so I didn't need to get one of those. But then I was just realizing that if I end up buying multiples of some of the all ages comics, so I can give them out to some other family members and some of the neighborhood kids, I may end up just doing another order to get myself a card binder, then get some of those extra copies. So
there you go.
It's nice to have options.
Exactly.
And I did put the Alterna Access website in the chat for people if they want to check out back issues.
Yeah, so if you're impatient on it, you want to get those back issues now, that's perfectly fine. We ship everything the next day. We got new issues released on the 8th, and we got so many orders that I was like, guys, please bear with me. There's no way these are all going out tomorrow. There's no way. So I caught up on, I think, all of the 8th orders. I caught up by the 13th or the 14th. There were so many orders on the 8th. And then everything at this point now is completely caught up. We're back to shipping out next day again.
Cool.
But it's a testament, though, to the readers. This is something that we're not in any distributor anymore. We're not with Diamond. We left Diamond in April of last year. We don't have graphic novel distribution. We don't really do graphic novels anymore. Some of our creators may do graphic novel Indiegogos or whatever, but we don't put out official graphic novels anymore. We put out giants now. And we don't have Comixology. We don't have a distributor with digital. We sell digital directly too now.
Yeah.
So something that a lot of publishers, a lot of creators out there might go, man, this just seems like Alterna is super risky. You need distribution to get sales, to get books out there. How's anyone supposed to know about you? But instead, I'm like, man, you kidding me? If this looks like risky to you, man, I've never been busier in my life. Like to carve out an hour, even just to be on the show, was like, okay, I won't do any of that today. Right now, I'll do this instead. I'm so busy. There's so many things going on. Alterna is better than ever before, and we're all going direct. We're not doing anything through a distributor. Looking at this campaign, for instance, I compare this apples to apples with a Diamond purchase order, and because that's basically what this is. This is like digital previews in crowdfunded form. And looking at what we've made, I'll even just say the sales that just came from the new issues, which should probably be about, I'd say, $8,000 is just derived from the single issues that are new. That through Diamond is the equivalent of about a $22,000 purchase order. Wow. So so the discount they take was 62% from us. So if the books made like $8,000 or so on here, that's how many books we would have had to sell. We would have had to sell $22,000 worth of product to make $8,000 from Diamond.
Wow. when I heard you a few years ago breaking this stuff down, I don't remember if it was actually in 2018. It might have been in 2019, but anyway, it was a little while ago. And I had mentioned earlier in the show that um, Richard Meyer and Ethan Van Sciver, with the success of um, Jawbreakers Lost Souls and Cyberfrog Blood Honey, that inspired me to jump into the crowdfunding game. But it was the success of Alterna that inspired me to, rather than go the self-publishing route, actually spin up a publishing company, and not only start off with my own stuff, but then also employ others and try to build it out from there. And quite frankly, it's to me, it didn't make sense to go through Diamond at all, starting where I was at. Because
if I started today, I would not
hearing that
entertain the idea.
just the headaches and the expense and everything you had to go through, and then I started talking to shop owners who were just as miserable with the process as you were. And I remember working in a shop in the 90s, helping manage a shop, and the only thing that the owner simply would not let me do is deal with Diamond, because he thought it would be cruel and unusual punishment. And he insisted on doing all of that himself. He couldn't in good conscience pass it off to anybody. So I just remember thinking, when I was going to get Outlier Comics off the ground, everything was going to be direct. And seeing your success and the success of so many others through crowdfunding and people that have started their own companies and are just going direct, All Caps Comics, for example. There are many others, but in the interest of time, I'll just kind of leave it there and say, I'm very happy with the idea of going direct to customer. Very happy with the state of crowdfunding as it is today. Really looking forward to where it goes in the next few years. And so as we have to kind of close out the show, I want to give you, Pete, an opportunity to say, any last words about the campaign, but then also get your take on where you think comics, crowdfunding specifically, but in general, where you think things are going in the next couple of years.
Honestly, I think that if people haven't already started trying to pivot towards maybe not just crowdfunding, but also going as much direct to the reader as possible and to the retailer too.
Yeah.
And I hope retailers reciprocate. I find that many do not. Many right. want you to go through Diamond. They still see Diamond as some kind of vetting process as opposed to trusting their own instincts as a salesman. They trust Diamonds instead, and Diamond doesn't have. They got S for brains. I don't know if I can curse on the show. I'd rather not if I can help it too. But when it comes to deciding what a good book is, I hope the retailers trust their own instincts on what they think would sell. And order direct from the publisher. But I would like to see more, and I think we're going to see that. We're going to see more retailers and more creators and more publishers, all of this type of stuff working directly together. We're going to see more creators and publishers selling direct to readers as well. And if Diamond is smart, and I tweeted this out, and it's the last piece of advice I'll ever give this godforsaken industry, and it doesn't deserve it anyway. Diamond should really start considering pivoting to becoming a fulfillment service for crowdfunding. Publishers should start considering doing this, utilizing crowdfunding as a preview system. And if Diamond was super smart, drop previews, that archaic 4-pound phone book, and put the money instead towards building a previews world as a crowdfunding comic book website that goes straight to the reader, straight to the retailer. And if retailers think for 1 second that, let's say a book like, I don't know, and we all know they don't think this way, but many say that they do. Let's say Berserker, right? That book made a whopper. Right. There's retailers out there that would think, well, that's it. They got everybody they're going to get. No one's ever going to buy that book again. I'm not going to stock that. And they'll try to get other retailers to boycott comic publishers or comics that go that route. That's to their detriment because all this stuff is proof of concept. If you can sell 1,000 backers on what you're doing here with a comic, distribution should enable you to sell 10,000. And if distribution doesn't think it could do that for you, it doesn't think it could take something successful and make it a blockbuster, then distribution needs to reevaluate every single thing it's doing wrong. because there's no reason on earth that with success at this level, you shouldn't be able to parlay that into a tremendous success.
Yeah, and I think, if I could boil down what you just said into a few words, is that they're going to have to be innovative, and they're going to have to be agile in moving, as you said, to pivot into what you just described. They're going to have to do something that they haven't done for a very, very long time, decades now at this point. Is they're going to have to stop holding on to what they had been doing for decades, and instead think creatively about what they need to do for the future, so that they don't become one of those dinosaurs that we were talking about earlier, which unfortunately newsprint paper may end up being, or will end up being at some point, through the changes of technology and market forces and supply shortages and all the rest of it that we were talking about. So yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I think they have a chance if they are willing to change their ways and be innovative and be humble and be willing to learn from other people. They have a chance.
Yeah, and do it before it's too late, because I'm noticing so many things happen in the comic industry. We've said this before. This kind of circles back to everything we talked about in the beginning. You're asking them, like you said, to be innovative and to be agile. Two things that the comic industry is not very much known for. But they need to be those things. That's every single misstep they've ever had, every single path that they've gone down the wrong one. It's because of that. It's because they refuse to be innovative. They refuse to pivot. They said, no, more of this, cram it down their throats. If they don't like it, let them, know that they're the worst person on earth because they don't like it. And then they'll buy it, right? They'll buy it. They'll like it. No. Start pivoting, start understanding what it is. What are the needs of not just the readers, your audience, the customers there, but what are the needs of those potential customers? Why don't they know about comics? Why don't they understand, hey, the movies you see, there's millions of awesome comics out there. Why aren't they getting that? It's because there's a lot of different questions that no one wants to ask, no one wants to answer, because it involves a lot of different things that they have to do that they've never done before. And they're refusing to accept that, yes, you have to do that. You have to. So we'll see if the industry does that. I think indie creators are going to be doing that, because honestly, the indie creators are so used to doing that. We have to pivot. We have to be agile. We have to be flexible.
Yeah.
We have to say, okay, it's not working. We can't just keep saying, no, the audience we don't have, they're going to keep enjoying what it is we're making. No, we have to keep searching for that audience and find new ways to reach out, new ways to stand out. The bigger companies, they're a little more complacent. They don't feel necessarily. They feel like it's, they come to us. We don't need to go to them. But they have to understand, no, you guys have to do that. You always have to do that.
Yeah. Agreed.
We'll see. Or they could not do that. I could care less.
Well, that's the thing, is that at this point, they could act on what we would consider the lessons of the past, and especially the most recent past, the last few years, or they could just keep trying to swim against the current and eventually wear themselves out and then sink beneath the waves, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So
everything should be, how can we be more innovative? How can we innovate today? How can we make something different today? And not in terms of, change the character or do this or do that. I mean, more in terms of the business. How do we reach people? How do we let people know that comic books are their next favorite thing? They're just not aware of it yet. And if every single one of us, like I said, a lot of the indie creators are doing that. But if every single person, every single company at the comic book mainstream industry level did that, it'd be a very different system today. It'd be a very different situation for everybody today. But I can't see them doing that. But I can totally see the future of the industry being paved by all of these different indie creators that are doing that.
Yeah, agreed.
And thank you to first and foremost, thank you to the readers that are enabling us to do this. Without you guys, we can't do anything.
Yeah, it's very simple. I was thinking about this morning, about how essentially there's a bunch of independent creators, independent publishers who are all trying to build engines, right, for their businesses, their books, getting their stories out there, and and really the readers are the fuel that make those engines go. Otherwise, there's no vehicle there. It's just, you know, an object that sits and doesn't move. So
Yeah, we're the
without-
trees falling in the forest by the dozens, and no one's hearing them. You know, it's that kind of a thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, on that note, thank you to all the readers of our books. Thank you so much to everybody who stopped by to join us today. We really appreciate it. I know you could be doing anything else. You chose to hang out with us. And thank you so much to Pete for stopping by. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, man. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. And let's go out to the world, make a great day. And remember,
don't let authority stop you from doing what you love. You are in control.